Far away from human civilization lies the Cthulhu Mythos, a world created by the American author Howard Philips Lovecraft. His world houses some of the most vicious entities ever created in the history of fantasy. Take, for instance, Azathoth, the destructive demon god, or Lu-Kthu, the wet globe of warts and pustules, or the energy-sucking ghoul god Mordiggian. So, in today's video, we're going to be talking about the MiGo, a race of brain-stealing aliens from outer space who were first introduced in The Whisperer in the Darkness. So, without further ado, let's begin the story. Before we get too deep into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Whisperer in the Darkness, 1939. Albert N. Wilmarth is a professor of literature at Miskatonic University in Arkham, Massachusetts. When Vermont witnesses one of the heaviest floods in history, the water swells up with mysterious objects hitherto unknown to mankind. The Daily News briefs the strange sightings, and this generates controversies across town. Wilmarth, too, gets mired in these discussions. Like, are these even real things or just figments of human imagination when times get tough? Are they optical illusions, or do we really have monsters living in uncharted territories? What do these sightings even mean? The old legends believed that the deserted mountains are home to strange creatures, and humans who dare to step too close to these unknown parts of the world are in for destruction and ruin. But Wilmarth finds himself allying with the skeptics. This is precisely when he receives a letter from a guy named Henry Wentworth Akeley, who wanted to change Wilmarth's views. Akeley lived in an old dilapidated farmhouse in Townsend, Vermont, and he claimed to have evidence supporting the existence of these monsters. The duo begins corresponding over letters, and thereby, we get to know more about these hideous extraterrestrial creatures plaguing Earth and mining a rare metal here. These hideous creatures apparently take little interest in human activities, lurking in the shadows where human eyes don't care to search. They've actually built a vigorous system of communication where they enter into secret pacts with certain human agents in order to fulfill their ulterior motives. Eventually, some of these agents ambush Akeley's letters, attack his farmhouse in the quiet of the night, and harass the poor guy. Soon, it turns into a bloodbath as they battle with gunfire that shakes the night with sacrifices. Many of the agents lose their lives trying to fight a fight that wasn't even theirs to begin with. Akeley, too, loses several guard dogs he had held dear. In one of Akeley's reports, he sketches a more detailed picture of these extraterrestrial creatures whom he had the pleasure and luck of killing. Apparently, they bleed a sickly green fluid instead of warm, dark blood. With more letters flowing from Akeley to Wilmarth, tensions between Akeley and the agents take a climactic turn until, all of a sudden, one fine day, Akeley inexplicably has a complete change of heart. He journals his experience of meeting these creatures whom he now believes to be benevolent beings that are inherently peace-loving. Moreover, these creatures have even shown him marvels and miracles that are beyond puny human imaginations. He further insists that Wilmarth should come and visit him, and Wilmarth must not forget to bring all the letters and photos that Akeley had sent him as evidence. You might think somebody has held Akeley at gunpoint, and, well, you're not exactly wrong. Anyways, Wilmarth is hesitant at first because none of this seems like the Akeley who had first reached out to him, but he complies nonetheless. When Wilmarth reaches Akeley's residence, the latter is in a paltry state, having been reduced to nothing but an immobile, half-dead corpse sitting on a chair. The darkness around him seems to have encroached on his physical form, and his mind seems to have lost its battle to the darkness. He advocates on behalf of the extraterrestrial creatures, speaking of the mysteries of the universe that these entities have revealed to him. Wilmarth also reveals that these creatures can surgically remove the human brain from the body with utmost skill and dexterity. They would then put the gooey pink mass into a canister that would preserve the brain for eternity. Thus, these beings have the power to immortalize the human mind as it survives the test of time and space. These canisters can journey through space, and Akeley points to a canister bearing his name. He then confesses to having agreed to undertake disembodied space travel in one such cylinder. It turns out they're not even alone in the room. There exists another canister with a brain inside and devices attached to it outside. It speaks to Wilmarth, practically brainwashing him about the pros of undertaking such a journey. It tries to convince Wilmarth why he must travel to Yuggoth on Pluto, where the creatures have an outpost. Naturally, Wilmarth gets more and more uncomfortable because he never wanted to be put in a spot like this right from the get-go, but here he was, talking to cans and watching his once enthusiastic pen pal making an odd buzzing whisper and spitting straight bullshit. As the night falls, Wilmarth is tired but can barely manage to fall asleep. He accidentally snoops up on a disturbing conversation where a number of bizarrely distinct voices come up with equally bizarre ideas. When the voices subside, a curious Wilmarth cannot help but go downstairs to probe into the matter. To his utter horror, he finds Akeley gone. What remained on the chair where the man was last seen was his thin robe, glaring at Wilmarth with emptiness. Wait, it gets even more terrifying. As Wilmarth inches closer to the cloth, he notices something grotesque amidst its folds. Shivers run down his spine and he darts out of the house. Without sparing much thought, he steals Akeley's car and escapes this alien-infested farmhouse in a mad fervor. The next day, the authorities reported that they found nothing but a house riddled with bullets. It turns out that all traces of Akeley had been lost to oblivion. His body, his mind, his association with the creatures, the physical evidence of these creatures, all gone. So you must be wondering, what was it that Wilmarth saw within the folds of the robe that made him run for his life? As the story ends, Wilmarth reveals that he had seen Akeley's disowned face and hands, which had been used by some non-human, faceless entity that had tried to disguise itself as a man, as Akeley. He's pretty certain that Akeley had already been canned by the time Wilmarth arrived at the farmhouse. That is, Akeley had died, and Wilmarth had been talking to one of those extraterrestrial creatures posing as Akeley. The MiGo in Lovecraftian lore. So you must be wondering, who exactly are these creatures? They were first named the MiGo in The Whisperer in the Darkness, but the story holds an air of vagueness around these creatures. In the story, they're physically giant, crab-like creatures with wings, and functionally, they're an alien race of spacefaring fungoid creatures who steal human brains. We already know that Lovecraft is infamous for crafting a unique brand of horror, Lovecraftian horror, also called cosmic horror or eldritch horror, where the fear of the unknown and the incomprehensible consumes the human mind. Knowledge here is forbidden and comes at the cost of sanity, just as you see in the case of Wilmarth, whose interaction with these extraterrestrial creatures comes down heavily upon him. Anyways, the story hinges upon the withholding of information from the protagonist about these mysterious creatures, which creates an atmosphere of sheer horror. But don't worry, we've dug deep enough to find out untold secrets about these entities. In Wilmarth's story, these creatures were referred to as fungi that have their outposts in Yuggoth, so that ties them to the alien vegetation Lovecraft wrote about in his sonnet cycle, Fungi from Yuggoth, a work that was published barely a year or two before, in 1929/30. Later writers also tried to use these fictional races to craft their own tales of horror, wonder, and awe. The Cthulhu mythos is so vast that the MiGos have evolved with time in the ever-expanding multiverse. Each new variation emerges with a deadlier form and function. Anatomy. Let's first examine what they look like. In Whisperer in Darkness, these creatures cannot be seen with the naked eye or even with ordinary photographic films. You'll need special equipment to capture visuals of their bodies, which are constituted of extra-worldly matter. They're huge, almost the size of an average human, but their features are pink incrustation. Instead of having a normal human head, they have a convoluted ellipsoid, which basically consists of fleshy rings that are stacked like pyramids. They also have massive antennae that spring out of their head. Their bodies are disjoined like crabs and have a number of paired appendages. From one of these appendages on their back arises a pair of giant membranous wings that are normally seen on bats. These wings are sort of dysfunctional on Earth, but they are of paramount importance in space, helping the MiGo fly through the ether in outer space. It's very typical of the wings you'd find in the Cthulhu Mythos, all leathery and haunting, so you can imagine the look of abject terror these beasts carry with them. Powers and abilities. In order to continue their risky ventures, the MiGo are gifted with a number of powers and abilities. For example, we've already spoken about their power of flight and invisibility. They can also go into suspended animation in order to survive and then be softened when they are reheated by some source of heat, such as the sun. In The Whisperer in Darkness, they possess extraordinary intelligence, turning one of their snitches, that is, Akeley, into prey. They're also smart enough to use Akeley as bait to lure Wilmarth to the farmhouse, where they not only play tricks with Wilmarth's mind and pose as Akeley, but also trick Wilmarth into submitting to their will before they fled the scene with any and all evidence. The MiGo have also figured out a way to transport humans from Earth to Pluto and beyond, something that humans themselves haven't yet figured out. The MiGo have developed brain cylinders that can harvest the human brain, discard the body, and render the soul new external modes of expression. Thus, they've managed to render humans physically incapacitated, yet tied to the throes of painful immortality where the mind lives on, enslaved for eons to come. These external devices allow the human brain to see, hear, and speak. Without an external body, you know nothing can hurt you, so you exist almost like a machine, without feeling or expressing emotions like pain and fear. Religion! These super-intelligent creatures have developed a religion and morality of their own. Their morals are deemed malicious and alien from a human perspective, but if you look at it through their eyes, are they doing anything different from what we as humans do? How is it different from, say, fisheries or apiaries, where we trap creatures in bulk, store and transport them, and then feast on them? Sure, we do it for self-preservation, and the healthy advancement of the human race comes at the cost of unhealthy destruction of an inferior race, but then on an extended scale, the MiGo aren't that different, are they? In The Whisperer in Darkness, the MiGo worship powerful outer gods like Nyarlathotep and Shub-Niggurath. In fact, there are numerous mystical designs on one of the moons of Yuggoth. The MiGo can not only sense these prints, but also find these transcriptions extremely auspicious. They've been deemed as useful in a number of processes referred to in the Necronomicon. But these powerful beings aren't without enemies. They are said to have been hunted down by a group of exterminators on Earth called the Brotherhood of the Yellow Sign. In the extended lore, the MiGo get into a number of rival races across the galaxy, fighting them all while striving for world dominion. Cthulhu Tech MiGo. First up in this multiverse, we have the Cthulhu Tech universe, where the MiGo have formed a huge empire that spans numerous galaxies. The MiGo made multiple attempts to conquer Earth because it held one of the most valuable resources known to them, the human brain. Their closest outpost to Earth was on Pluto, and they had created an army of cloned humans with bloodshot red eyes and jet-black skin. These artificial humans were called the Nazadi, a race created in the mid-21st century to ensnare and enslave their biological originals. To this end, the MiGo launched 2 Arcanotech wars in a span of 20 years. In the first Arcanotech War that happened between 2059 and 2065 AD, nearly half of humanity was wiped out and Earth was left in a ravaged state. In 2064 AD, the Nazadi figured out the truth about their origins, and the population was divided into pro-Earthers and the no-Earthers. One group wanted to ally with their biological ancestors, while the other group wanted to be faithful to their extraterrestrial creators, that is, the MiGo. Thus, a civil war broke out, and the pro-Earth Nazadi signed a truce with the humans on Earth and defeated the MiGo. Thus, the First War ended. Some of the anti-Earth Nazadi who survived the battle continued to remain loyal to the MiGo, launching guerrilla warfare from time to time. Frustrated with the outcome of the First War, the MiGo decided to take matters into their own hands. Thus, they launched the Second Arcanotech War between 2074 and 2078 AD, where the MiGo themselves laid a siege on Earth. And to an extent, they were indeed successful. Huge colonies of humans were destroyed across the solar system where we had built our defense bases. They then dived straight into the polar countries on Earth: Alaska, northwestern Canada, Nordic regions, Greenland, Iceland, Tasmania, the southern tip of Argentina, and most of Russia. Most of humanity was wiped out as a result of this strategic invasion. Here, the MiGo society exhibits a rigid hierarchy, having 300 different strains, each with its own preference about occupation, opinion, habit, and capability. Their DNA is extremely mutable, allowing them to adapt and evolve quickly to hostile environments. They also exhibit psionic abilities. To a distant human eye, they're nothing but hive minds, but surprisingly, each individual MiGo has unique thoughts and feelings that are incomprehensible for humanity, just as human emotions are incomprehensible and insignificant to the MiGo. They communicate with the help of motion patterns from the leathery wings on their backs and the numerous tendrils coming out of their faces. Having said that, they also exhibit remarkable social cohesion. When a number of MiGo find themselves in the same locale, they create a regional collective consciousness where they behave like ants and bees, tailored to cater to one ulterior goal. MiGo warships. Cthulhu Tech. Anyways, things had changed by the time it came to 2078 AD. The war had now spread, and there were 4 battalions competing against each other. First, we had the New Earth government comprised of humans and their Nazadi allies. Next, we had the entire MiGo race hell-bent on colonizing and exploiting Earth. Third, we had the agents of the esoteric order of Dagon, that is, Cthulhu. And fourth, there was the Rapine Storm, aka Hastur. Cthulhu and Hastur were part of the group known as the Great Old Ones, and the MiGo were familiar with the lore. They knew that if Cthulhu were to return, they would be trapped and enslaved, so they had pretty high stakes in warding that off. Okay, hold up. We know there are way too many stakeholders here, and you're probably wondering where these entities came from and who they even are. Cthulhu and his half-brother Hastur are great cosmic dreadful entities worshipped by their respective cults. They're a part of the pantheon of the Great Old Ones. As for the Great Old Ones, they were once the mighty rulers of the earth, but now they were a group of evil beings harboring great power in the Cthulhu Mythos. They're different from the outer gods like Azathoth, Nyarlathotep, and Yog-Sothoth, who are cosmic entities exerting influence from deep space far beyond Earth and its reaches. The story also introduces Nyarlathotep, also known as the Crawling Chaos, who happens to be the soul and messenger of the outer gods. These are also very different from other powerful extraterrestrial entities such as the Chthonians, the Deep Ones, the Elder Things, and the MiGo. Anyways, the MiGo continue to expand their territorial acquisition on Earth, and by 2085 AD, most of Central Asia and Manchuria in China have come under their direct control. But the Rapine Storm is an equally formidable force and exerts control over Southeast Asia, Tibet, Western Xinjiang, southwestern China, Afghanistan, northern Iran, northern Pakistan, northeast India, Turkmenistan, the Himalayan mountains, and Transcaucasia. Even the oceans and coastlines weren't free from conflict. They were under the control of the esoteric order of Dagon. Whatever was left of Earth lied with the ineffective New Earth government, which kept losing more and more territory to the external threats of the MiGo, the Rapine Storm, and the agents of Cthulhu. Eldrich Skies MiGo. Up next, we have the Eldrich Skies universe, where the MiGo are the apex predators of the dark skies. That is, they dominate space travel, passing through thousands of little worlds in the galaxy within just 400 parsecs of Earth, which is the same as 1,200 light-years. In this version, the MiGo are at a crossroads with the Great Old Ones for having devastating end goals, so the MiGo make it a point to ensure that these errant gods do not escape the dimensional prison that they're trapped within. The MiGo here are terrified of the Cthulhoids, led by Cthulhu, so they constantly monitor the prison status of these extra-dimensional vampiric psychic entities. You know how common enemies are essentially friends for a purpose? Well, the mutual fear and hatred towards Cthulhu has brought humanity and the MiGo together, where the latter has even helped the former with advanced technology. In this universe, the MiGo had ruled over Earth 250 million years before humanity started mastering the art of space travel. Back then, the Elder Ones and the great race of Yith used to dominate the world. As trade and war developed over the next 50 million years, the three forces saw conflict and collaboration amongst one another. The war had to practically come to an end when the MiGo in 200 million BC blasted a comet into Earth, killing millions of people in a major city of the Elder Ones. Consequently, the Elder Ones were forced to sign a peace treaty where the MiGo gained significant advantage over Earth. Their dominion continued until 65 million BC when an asteroid hit the Earth, killing all the dinosaurs. Since then, the MiGo had abandoned Earth, returning to this place only for small-scale mining operations. Here, the MiGo communicate with one another through telepathy, but they are extremely selective in their communication. For them, conveying emotions is like transmitting codes, cold and dry, never heartfelt. Delta Green MiGo and Pathfinder MiGo. Let us now travel to the Delta Green universe. Here, these monstrous beings have successfully managed to get into the heads of humans. We don't really know why, but they have actually manipulated their way into human societies, bureaucracies, and multinational corporations. The US is now a puppet for agents of the MiGo. Here, their society is divided into three main castes: scientists, workers, and soldiers. The number of wings they had was determined by the caste they belonged to. These wings, along with their limbs, arise from their hideous gelatinous bodies. Weirdly, they continue to function normally even after losing 55% of their body mass. In fact, they can even hibernate with only 12% of their body mass. They are peak logical creatures, computing lines of logic like a machine would code programs. That also makes them prey to the cons of order and synchronicity. That is, they lack creativity and imagination, gifts that only humans possess. Things look equally bleak in the Pathfinder universe, where the MiGo continue to pursue their ultimate motive of infiltrating intelligent minds and controlling them in order to strive for a monopoly over the galaxy. To the MiGo, humans are a means to an end, a tool they wield to sculpt the world according to their will. To the MiGo, human emotions like kindness and compassion are frail and petty against the grand schemes of the cosmos. Marvelous verdict! The Cthulhu Mythos, with its ever-expanding lore of horror and fantasy, tickles the nerves of terror across generations. The MiGo, as a scary race of alien fungoids, hold a special place in this Pandora's box of mysterious creatures. They creep up in your nightmares, not to beat or chase you through the dark, but to steal the ultimate weapon that you have. The MiGo lore is not for the faint of heart. A weak mind is exactly what they prey upon. What humanity holds dearest to itself is nothing but gooey jelly meant to be canned like tuna for these inhumanely mechanical beasts. We can never truly know what hideous monstrosities exist out there, far away from the human eye, surpassing the limits of our technological advancement. They may be a fictional race, but the threat that they pose is ever so real. So that's it for today's video. So let us know which MiGo universe is your favorite, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's video. Unfortunately, now it's time for MiGo. Me to go. What?